Is Cade Cunningham the most likely player in the NBA to have a breakout season this year? NBA GMs voted on it. We're going to talk about the results in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Ku Kahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Ku Kahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. By the time you guys listen to this, I'm dropping this on Thursday. The Pistons will be heading to play OKC in their second preseason game. It should be a lot of fun. I know for sure the Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama first preseason game involving OKC in San Antonio was extremely fun to watch. So I hope Chet gives the Pistons, some Pistons fans, some fun to watch. Obviously, you hope the Pistons players bring you some fun, but I think Chet's going to be really fun to watch this year, so I'm looking forward to seeing him play against the Detroit Pistons. In today's episode, though, we're not going to be talking about that yet. We'll have a recap of it for the next episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the NBA GM poll that comes out every offseason. I don't know how long they've been doing it. Actually, it says right here, the 22nd annual NBA GM survey, where they get asked 50 questions, and NBA GMs vote anonymously, obviously, and give their answers. Now, if you guys haven't checked it out, go check it out. If you're just an NBA fan, it has a bunch of interesting stuff that doesn't include the Pistons. But the Pistons are included in some of these answers. And the first one we'll be talking about, and we'll talk about all the other ones throughout the podcast. That's what all this podcast is going to be about. The first one we're going to be talking about is a question that was posed to the NBA GMs. It says, which player is most likely to have a breakout season in 2023-2024? And in this voting, Cade Cunningham was in a top two vote getter. So Anthony Edwards was first at 23%, and Cade was second at 20%. Now there's obviously 30 NBA GMs. I haven't had to do math like that for real in a long time, so I'm not about to sit here and figure out what 20% of 30 is. What is that? Six votes, right? Because 10% would be 3, and then Cade's. I think that's what it would be, but come on. I haven't done math since high school. It's like, chill on me like that for real. I think it's 6. But either way, 20% of the vote, he came in second. So I think it's, again, this just continues to go down the line of what we've talked about all offseason with the hype surrounding Cade Cunningham. It started with the Team USA camp. It continued on with the pickup runs we were hearing about. It continued on with the talk from the athletic writers, with the articles getting written about him, Steve Kerr talking about him. There's a lot of hype around Cade right now going into his third season, what really should be his second season, to be honest, but his third season into the NBA, and I think he's going to have an absolutely fantastic year. Do I think he's the most likely to have a breakout season? Anthony Edwards is an interesting answer to have over him, because I feel like everyone acts like Anthony Edwards has already arrived, which has been a little bit of a problem for me, because I love Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards is dope. I think he's a great player. I love watching him. He's a fun player to watch. Not just watch play, but he's a fun interview too, a fun guy to listen to. But I have felt like that he's been a little bit, he's been awarded this stature that he doesn't necessarily deserve just yet. Not that he's like bad or anything, but I feel like people have been quick to give him this ranking that he hasn't really deserved yet, but yet they're also putting him in the breakout season category. So I don't know how those two things can go together. The NBA top 70, top 100 list came out, I believe, 2 days ago as well. Cade was 74th. Anthony Edwards, they had him ahead of Damian Lillard. They had him 12th, I believe it was. So, I don't know how much high, if he's 12th, how much higher is that dude going? Are you saying he's going to go from 12th to the best player in the NBA? I don't see how that happens. And I know that the top 100 isn't made of GMs, but that's what that's kind of what I'm hinting at, is that Anthony Edwards is already perceived as to be a broken out player. He's already here, according to, the masses. Cade is not. Cade is not considered arrived yet. He's had what I'm assuming a lot of people outside of Detroit consider to be a disappointing start to his career. I'm sure, and I've seen some people in Detroit, some fans, have felt like he's had a disappointing start to his career. I'm sure Cade probably feels like he had somewhat of a disappointing start to his career due to injury. So if Cade is like the 74th ranked player on a list, the NBA Top 100, yeah, I think he's probably the number one guy to break out, because I think he can launch himself into the top 30 this year. That's how great I think Cade's going to be. And we talked about this on the last podcast. The Pistons need to do a better job of helping him get there. Cade needs to help himself. Cade needs to help the team by improving and bring that three-point shot along. But the Pistons also need to do a good job and a better job that they've done thus far at putting functional lineups around him and functional NBA players around him. Now, I think it might be, I know we talked a lot about the starting lineup in the last podcast and about how I would disagree with the starting lineup for this reason. But I think also, on the positive side with it, I think it all may be coming at the perfect time. Like the whole Cade improving and helping himself and having functional players around him could be on a collision course, simply because the Pistons' young guys that were drafted before him are hitting strides where they really should be at this point NBA functional players. Like a guy like Isaiah Stewart, a guy like a Killian Hayes. If he cracks the rotation, it's going to be because he's improved to becoming a functional rotation player. Like these guys should be getting to a point in their fourth year to where you can consider them functional NBA players. So that could be a collision course heading on with, why I said how Cade needs to have good players around him. Well, it might just be at this point some players around him that weren't good last year could be good now. They also added veterans, obviously, and some that is, in Monty Morris and Joe Harris. We'll see how much they play. But also simply just the development of Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren really are going to help him, Cade that is, and obviously keeping Bojan for however long he stays on the team. That will help him offensively as well. Monty, I think he's a really good coach, so I have trust in him to get the most out of Cade. I have trust in him to try to put an offense around him that does the best possible on the floor with Cade. If the Pistons start the season with that starting lineup we talked about last podcast, which would be like Cade, Asar, Bojan, Stu, Duren, either two things. One, I'd start to question, like, okay, that I don't know if that makes sense. Like we spent the whole last podcast talking about it, so I'm not going to go into it. But I don't know if that makes sense. Or two, this improvement that the rest of these guys made must have been legit. They must have been really legit, and it's going to pay off to a point where it's not going to hamper Cade offensively. Because if it doesn't, yeah, I think Cade's most likely to break out. I think he could win Most Improved Player of the Year this year. I think Cade is fantastic, man. Like I don't know what else to say about him. I could go through his second half of his rookie season, how he looked. I can go through what his numbers looked like outside the final Boston game he played last year, where he was clearly not 100%. Actually, I'm going to do that anyways, because I feel like those numbers are important, at least a little bit. If Basketball Reference will let me pull it up. There you go. 43% from the field, 21 points per game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds, a steal a game, 31% from deep, and 83% from the free throw line. If Cade were to average 22, 6, and 6 this year, I think that would be just a little bit up below what I think he can do this year. But even at that, I think everyone would be like, I mean, if his percentages, if his efficiency was better, I still think people would give him, breakout player or whatever. I think that would warrant it, especially if the Pistons are winning more games than they did last year. I think Cade would get the recognition. I think he would be the breakout player of the year. But this is what I want to ask you guys, though. I want to have some fun, not just with the Pistons. Let's just move Cade to the side. I'm assuming a lot of us are going to believe Cade's going to be most likely to break out. If you had to pick someone outside of Cade in the NBA to be the breakout player of the year this year, who would you pick? So I'll tell you guys some of the names, then we'll move on. Some of the names that the NBA GMs voted on. Tell me if it's one of these guys or if you guys came up with a different name. But some of the names the NBA GMs voted on: Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Tyrese Maxey, Desmond Bane, Mikal Bridges, Tyrese Halliburton, Chet Holmgren, Kyrie Irving, which is like I don't get that one. Jaden McDaniels, Evan Mobley, Alperen Sengun. I thought that was a good one. And Zion, another one. I just don't get that one. But let me know who you guys think. Outside of Cade, who do you think is most likely to have a breakout season this year in the NBA? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at @KukaHill. When we come back, will the Detroit Pistons be the most improved team in the NBA? Again, NBA GMs voted on this. See where the Pistons ended up when we come back. But first, I've got to tell you guys. Oh, my fault. Hold on, brought up the wrong one. That's my bad. First, I got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And speaking of over and unders, the Detroit Pistons win total for this upcoming season, according to FanDuel, over-under is 28.5. Do you think the Pistons will win over 28 games this year? That would be a plus 12 increase over their last season win total, which was 17 games. Can they do it? Let me know. And if you feel confident about it, head over to FanDuel and submit it over there. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL and NBA season. Again, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and use code LOCKEDON to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com, the official partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Real quick, not basketball related, but I want to ask you guys, for those of you guys out there who are sports fans and maybe play some fantasy football, I just want to hear from you guys with this. I want to talk with my listeners here. Just real quickly. For those of you guys who are in fantasy football leagues, do you guys have a problem with trades that go on in your league? Do you guys feel like some crazy trades be going through? Do you be feeling like people be just trying to scam you in trades all the time? Because we have this issue going on in our fantasy football group right now, and it's blowing up my phone. People are ruthless right now. It's turned into civil war in that group chat. They're going crazy because I just want to know, is anyone else's fantasy football league as serious and as insane and as toxic as mine seems to be this year? Let me know. I want to hear from you guys. But anyways, let's get back to the Pistons. Which team will be most improved in 2023, 2024 was a question asked to all NBA GMs in the NBA, obviously. And the Pistons were not a top 2 team, but they were a top 3 team. They tied with the Dallas Mavericks and the Orlando Magic. Now, the number 1 team is the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the second team is the Houston Rockets. Tied for third, like I just said, is Dallas, Detroit Pistons, and the Orlando Magic. Other teams receiving votes, the Golden State Warriors, Indiana Pacers, Los Angeles Lakers, New Orleans Pelicans, and the Utah Jazz. Now, before I give my answer, do you guys think the Pistons will be the most improved team in 2023, 2024? Let me know. I want to hear from you guys first. But do I think they're going to be the most improved in 2023, 2024? It depends how you are defining it. So, like, for example, the Pistons won 17 games last year. I don't think that they actually were a 17-win team last year. I think if they had Cade healthy, I don't think they're like some great team. I think they may have been the worst team in the NBA still, but I think they would have won maybe 22, 23 wins. Like that's maybe the games they would win last year if Cade was healthy all year. That's where I think they would have hovered around. With that being said, that means I think getting to 32 wins, getting to 33 wins, isn't as crazy as maybe just looking at 17 wins sounds. Now, look, I'm also someone who understands history and is willing to know your history when predicting the future. And Jack Kelly of the Detroit Bad Boys wrote an article talking about what's the likelihood of teams that finished last in previous season. What's the average win jump? How many teams have jumped 20? And it doesn't happen often at all. And I understand people are going to say, well, how many players or how many of those teams, lost their best player or lost their number 1 overall pick? I don't know. But I'm sure every team in NBA history that has finished last, I'm sure every single one of them were not just straight up trash because they were trash. I'm sure some of them also had some unforeseen circumstances that have happened. The Pistons are not the only ones that have had some tough circumstances cause them to finish with a bad record. So I have to assume it's happened to other teams before. Either way, large jumps don't happen a lot in NBA history without like some crazy moves being made. And the Pistons didn't make any crazy moves. So I understand why some people would say, 30 wins is a little crazy. However, if you think like me that the team was probably like a 22-win team, an 8-win jump shouldn't be that insane. So if the Pistons were to go out there and win let's even go on the lesser side. Let's say they win 30 games, 31 games. Okay, let's say 31. I think they can get to 32, 33 around there. But let's say they win like 30, 31 games. That would be a 14-win jump over last season. I think that would be a pretty... what other team could have a higher win jump than 14 wins? So if we're going literally strictly off of like wins improved, yeah, I think the Pistons could be. I think they have a chance to be. However, if I had to put my money on it, I don't know if the Pistons are the team I'd put the money on. And some Pistons fans are going to hate to hear me say this, but it's just, I think I'm being objective with this one. I think it might be the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets won 22 games this past year, and they did nothing but add vets after vets after vets after vets and got rid of young player after young player after young player. They are very clearly pushing their chips in now, and just like the Pistons brought in Monty Williams, the Houston Rockets brought in Ime Udoka. All the off-the-court stuff, I'm not touching that, but on the court, he obviously has been a good coach, was a really good coach with the Boston Celtics. They brought him in, and they brought in veterans that help with defense too. They brought in defenders to help with a team that has a lot of good offensive players, and Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, and I know Jabari Smith is more of a two-way player, or projects to be a two-way player, but you guys get what I'm saying, and Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore, like, those guys are being surrounded by vets that are going to be ready to win right now. So I think Houston probably is the safer bet to go most improved. But what would have to happen for the Pistons to actually be the most improved team? A few things would need to happen. Obviously, the simple answer is everyone just get better. But, obviously, I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to get specific with it. I'm going to give you guys three things because obviously there's a laundry list you could go through, but I'm going to give you the top three things for me. One, Cade has to be an all-star. And if he's not actually an all-star because of the team's record, he needs to be an all-star level player, which I think is doable. The team, depending on who they play Cade with, so if they play Cade with the starting lineup that everyone's discussing, the Sarr, Bojan, Stu, Duren, that lineup, either one, needs to be really good defensively, or two, they need to have improved to a point offensively with the spacing that I didn't even foresee coming. That needs to be the second thing. Whoever Cade starts with needs to enable him on one of the sides of the floor, basically, is what I was trying to say there. Either it needs to enable him strongly offensively, or it needs to enable him strongly defensively that maybe can transition into his offense. It has to help him thrive. Cade's at the center of all of it. So that's two. The third thing that I'd go with, they need to have one of their young guys outside of Cade take a bigger jump than expected. So whether that's Jalen Duren, whether that's Jane Ivey, whether that's Isaiah Stewart, whether that's Isaiah Livers when he gets back, whether that's, I'm not going to include Sarr because that's going to be a jump. This is his first year. Killian Hayes. If one of these guys needs to take a bigger jump than expected, because we're all expecting Jalen Duren to get better. We're all expecting Jane Ivey to get better. Most Pistons fans are expecting Isaiah Stewart to get better. I'd say some Pistons fans expect Isaiah Livers to get better. And very few fans expect Killian Hayes to get better, but those are the five young guys that I think if one of them takes a jump larger than anybody expects, that will translate to more wins, and the Pistons will have a chance to be the most improved team in the NBA. Now, do I think it would launch them into play-in? I don't know, okay? I don't want to go that far with it. But most improved team, yeah, I think it could possibly happen. If one of those guys takes a bigger jump, I can see this team winning 35 games. But in order for them to get to 35 games, Cade has to be an all-star. The lineup he plays with is enabling him on one of the sides of the floor, and one of his sidekicks need to take an unforeseen jump. Those three things happen, Pistons could win 35-plus games. Now you're talking about 18-win, 20-win jump, and that 100% would be easily the most improved team. And also the Pistons running Monty Williams. I mentioned that earlier, but having Monty Williams, who a lot of us believe is one of the better coaches, hopefully, in the NBA. I mean, over the last few seasons, he definitely has been. Add all that together, the Pistons could be the most improved team. But, again, like I said, if I had to put my money on it, I think the NBA GMs, I actually don't know if they got it right, because I don't know if I'd go OKC. Because OKC made the play-in, and I don't think they'd make a big enough jump to go from play-in to, like, top 5 team or anything. Now, maybe they can. SGA is that fantastic, so, I mean, maybe they do. But my money would be who the NBA GMs voted as the second most likely Houston Rockets because of everything they brought in and signaling a turn of, not relying on young players. They did what Pistons fans believe the Pistons did, except like turned it up 10 notches. Like they went out there and just said screw it. So I'd say the Houston Rockets, but the Pistons definitely have a chance to do so for sure if those three things happen, and it's not impossible if those three things happen. So let me know what you guys think. Outside the Pistons, who do you guys think could be the most improved team in the NBA this year? Is it the Houston Rockets? Is it the OKC Thunder? Is it someone else? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. When we come back, this question kind of has to do with the same thing, with the Pistons being the most improved team, or it definitely impacts that. Is Monty Williams going to be the most impactful coach this season in the NBA? We're going to talk about that when we come back, but first, you guys got to hear from some of our lovely sponsors. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so actually, Monty Williams got voted for a few of these questions concerning coaches in the NBA. NBA GMs gave him at least one vote in a few of these. So the first one he got, it was which head coach is the best manager and motivator of people? Eric Spoelstra got 1, Steve Kerr got 2, Tyronn Lue got 3, Greg Popovich got 4, and then also receiving votes, Monty Williams, he got at least 1. This is one I actually thought Monty would appear higher on. Now, actually, I can see how they probably are using the DeAndre Ayton thing against him, because that definitely went sideways, and Monty has to wear some of that on him. Now, it wasn't all on him, but certainly some of it. He's part of the relationship too. But even still, I thought Monty maybe would go higher on this list. But still, he got a vote there. Where'd it go? I just lost it. Okay, right here. This question was, which new or relocated head coach will make the biggest impact on his new team? Now, this one, again, I think plays into the last segment about, can the Pistons make this big jump? Because obviously, getting a new head coach can severely impact your team, good or bad. And everyone projects Monty to severely impact the team in a positive light. Now, the NBA GMs voted. I think they probably align a little bit with me here, because they went Ime Udoka at 57% of the vote. But in second place was Monty Williams at 17%. Third was Frank Vogel, and then you had Adrian Griffin and Darko, the Toronto Raptors head coach. I don't want to pronounce his last name and mispronounce it, but I think it definitely is between Monty Williams and Ime Udoka, simply because they're taking over two of the teams that were two of the worst teams in the entire NBA last year. So you can only go up. They're both upgrades, I think, in my opinion, over the previous guys that were coaching the teams in Stephen Silas and Dwayne Casey. His funny thing is that both those guys are with the Pistons right now. That actually is pretty funny. I think they're both going to do a great job, though. I really like Stephen Silas as assistant coach. I think Casey is going to be great as like an advisor and someone to have around their organization. The players respect him, especially the ones he's coached over the last 4 years. So not saying it's funny in a light like, oh, how could they have him? I just think it's funny that the guys that got replaced are all on the Pistons. I just thought that's a coincidence. But, yeah, I think they'll both do good things with the Pistons. But like I was saying, they're both replacing guys of really terrible teams last year, and they're both coming into this season with more veterans on the team. They both have reasons to believe, their best player is going to continue to get better. Now, Jalen Green's being surrounded with an actual point guard. Jalen Green's being surrounded with defenders. And then the Pistons are simply getting back a healthy Cade for maybe the first time in his career in the NBA. They're getting back a healthy Cade. They added some veterans themselves. So I definitely think it's between Ime and Monty. But simply because of what I said in the segment just before this one, I think Houston added more win-now players, which will translate to more wins for Houston, which will translate to Ime having a higher impact on his team than Monty Williams will have in the first NBA season with their new teams. Now, if the things I said in the last segment happen, Cade's an all-star and one of his teammates take a bigger jump that was seen, maybe Monty can pull that off. I'm not sitting here saying that Ime Udoka is a better coach than Monty Williams. I think there's an argument to be had that both of them, I'm not going to sit here and pit them against each other. I think they're both really good coaches, and you can make an argument for either one. But the coach doesn't play. They can only do so much. And I just feel like the Houston Rockets got more ready now players, which will translate to more success for them. So I think Ime is probably the correct choice here. But Monty, I think he's going to do a great job with the Pistons this year. I think he's going to impact them heavily this year in a positive light. And even though I think Ime and the Houston Rockets will get the Pistons in the first year of this new transition, the hope is that the Pistons, and I believe they will because of Cade Cunningham, will have the better, will have the last laugh over the next few years. But I think Houston might get the dub over the Pistons this year. But that's all I've got for you guys today. What do you guys think? Do you guys think Monty will be the most impactful coach this year, or do you think it will be Ime Udoka? Or is it another coach that we haven't even mentioned? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at @KukaHill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, stay safe out there. Go Pistons tonight. Enjoy the game. Until next time, peace out.